Thank you to Beyond Nuclear and the Nuclear Information Resource Service for hosting this really important event. So Sharon Squassoni, I'm a former State Department, U.S. Arms Control and Disarmament Agency, and the Congressional Research Service staffer. Looked at these issues for a long time. I apologize. I'm going to need to duck out for another meeting a little bit after this. So the order is not because this topic is the most important, but I need to get on. I'm going to talk about the military elements of this, supposed nuclear renaissance. Next slide. Got it? There we go. So just very briefly, going to look at three things. What's behind the big push for military nuclear power? What are the problems and the risks? And what's actually happening? There's been a lot of news recently. All right, so why nuclear energy for the military? The cover slide, the photograph on my cover slide was actually a very old reactor, the PM2, that was deployed to Greenland. The Army's done this a long time, and they decided a long time ago that it wasn't cost effective. It just wasn't a good idea. So here we are, back 50, 60, 70 years later. What's the reasoning? Well, it's called strategic. Nuclear energy is strategic. This is not unique to nuclear energy. You may have noticed that the Trump administration has brought a lot of issues under the national security tent. But what are the specific things they call out? Well, it's necessary for AI domination. It's necessary for energy independence. We need access to uninterruptible power supplies on military bases and for forward deployed forces. The U.S. also, this is great power competition. The U.S. needs to outcompete Russia and China in so many different places, including nuclear exports. And the assumption is that the U.S. is going to uphold nonproliferation standards better than Russia and China, and I'm going to talk a little bit about why that is not the case. So I just bring up this little quote from the National Interest article 2 months ago. It highlighted that the Pentagon was actually screwing up nuclear energy for the military. But it had this quote, which is that the nuclear industry is really excited by DoD as a customer because they have deep pockets, a high tolerance for technical risk, and a history of turning experimental technology into successful commercial products. So underneath this all, there is a trend towards taking these military reactors and trying to translate them into the commercial sector. So my question for you here is, does the U.S. public have deep pockets and a high tolerance for technical risk? The recent policies, you may be aware of or familiar with the executive orders from last year, and I know some of the other panelists are going to dive a little deeper into those. But Linda mentioned this blurring of not just public and private, but also military and civilian. So I think some of what's behind this is that, some kind of public subsidies are fast and easy to do. So what you see in the particular executive order that I'm going to talk about is using Department of Energy sites and Department of Defense sites to host new nuclear reactors, microreactors, transportable reactors, but also using material that came from defense programs. And the most recent thing is taking plutonium, surplus plutonium, and handing it to industry for fuel. And in some cases, some of these companies have no experience with it. So this is an interesting development. In terms of the military versus civilian line blurring, why is that so important? Because if it's not civilian, you don't need NRC regulation. Now, there are a couple exceptions to this, and I will talk about them. Okay, next slide. All right. So what is behind this? They're trying to create a playbook. They're trying to take things that are done in the military sector with the hope that it will translate into commercial nuclear power. So speed up development and also make it cheaper, right? But that holds an assumption that there's a seamless transition from a reactor that has been licensed by the DOE or the DOD, and that it will then have this seamless transition to NRC licensing, right? It also ignores the fundamental costs associated, or that plague small modular reactors, right? It's not about demonstrating that they work. It's about modularity and mass production. And that is not what you're going to get from military deployments of reactors. So, for a lot of reasons, and I know my time is short, I'm not going to go into why all their national security rationales for nuclear energy don't make a whole lot of sense, but here's one big one. AI, if you want AI dominance, you need power now, right? It's in the newspaper on the front page every day. Nuclear power is not going to supply that, not in the next 5 years, maybe not even in the next 10 years. I'll talk about these other things a little later. All right, so in effect, a national security sort of nuclear energy basis doesn't actually improve your national security, it actually worsens risks. So just for example, if you're going to have reactors based on military bases, if you're going to deploy those overseas, those are some military operations risks that we have not dealt with. If you are going to have new fuels, and I know Ed and we'll probably talk a little bit more in depth about this, and processes, those can increase proliferation risks, not reduce them. And I'm not even talking about safety issues. We're just talking about security. Okay, so this particular executive order, you might not have paid attention, it's really specific, right? It's meant to speed the deployment of advanced nuclear reactors at DOE and DOD sites. And it even contains deadlines, right? So DOE is supposed to have an operating advanced reactor by November 2027, but it's also supposed to designate AI at Department of Energy sites and also just operating with, so they don't have to be on DOE sites, but operating with Department of Energy sites as defense critical missions. Why? Because that gets it a free pass from regulations that they would normally have to abide by. DOD has a goal of having an operating Army-regulated reactor at a domestic facility by November 2028. What else is in the executive order? DOE needs to designate these two types of fuel, high-assay, low-enriched uranium, and plutonium, which they've done to distribute to industry. And they're supposed to jumpstart a privately funded nuclear fuel recycling, reprocessing, and fuel fabrication technologies at DOE and DOD sites, not just to make fuel for the military reactors, but also for commercial power reactors and research reactors. So you could have private recycling on a government site that is not NRC regulated for commercial power fuel. And lastly, this executive order called for promoting nuclear exports, right, because we have to outcompete Russia and China, to the tune of 20 new nuclear cooperation agreements by the end of the 120th Congress. So that's in 2 years' time. That's the next Congress. You know how many nuclear cooperation agreements we have now? Take a guess. 23, so more or less, right? One of them is with a whole bunch of countries in Europe. So we're going to double those. And I'm going to talk a little bit at the end just about the Saudi agreement. Next slide. All right. So what has DOE done so far? Well, it has designated sites for AI. They're up there. It has put together the HALEU and plutonium distribution programs. And look which companies are getting plutonium. Oklo doesn't even have, do they have a plutonium fueled reactor? No.
They have a plan for one.
Oh, they have a plan for one. Okay.
Called Pluto.
Right. So the $19 million, which is not, sorry about the typo, which is not a lot of money, has been awarded to these companies on the bottom to solve the economic and technological challenges associated with fuel recycling. Those challenges are so significant that we gave up on fuel recycling in the 1970s, not just because of cost, but because of the proliferation implications. They have awarded $20 million to companies that have no experience. Next slide. All right, what's DoD done? You might be familiar with Project Pele. This has been going on since the first Trump administration. It's a microreactor hosted at the Idaho National Lab. That may come online by 2028, but notice it's already been 9 years for a military reactor on a government site. That might give you a little pause. The Advanced Nuclear Power Initiative, which was launched in 2024, for the most part, those reactors should be NRC licensed. I think the Air Force and also the Navy have said, we're going to go with NRC licensing. But what happened last year is that the Army created this Project Janus, which is specifically not using NRC licensing. And they have identified 9 bases just last month or 2 months ago that could be candidate sites. And lastly, the Navy, which has a lot of experience in small modular reactors, right? I mean, it's built almost as many naval reactors as we have commercial nuclear power reactors in the US. They're getting in on this business as well. They just recently identified, to my mind, these are a lot of local bases, right? Virginia, Maryland, North Carolina, but they're probably going to use commercial vendors and probably NRC licensing. But the best was just announced last week. They're going to take the USS Ford nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, and they're going to feed electricity to the Norfolk base. I would like to ask you, do you think that's a good use of a $50 billion platform to provide backup? I think there are a lot of other options. Next slide. Sure. All right, so finally, my summary slide. Okay. Using Department of Energy and DoD sites to end run NRC licensing, if that is the objective, it won't speed commercialization of small modular reactors for the reasons I already gave. And it won't be, even that won't be quick enough to help AI dominance. Handing out HALEU and plutonium to industry, but more importantly, recycling, the US re-energizing or actually developing a commercial recycling program has specific proliferation risks, particularly if other countries follow our lead. Outcompeting Russia and China in nuclear exports. What we are poised to do is to allow South Korea and Saudi Arabia to do enrichment of uranium and reprocessing of plutonium. We're granting consent. I mean, the deals are not, the ink is not dry, but that will be a sea change in our non-proliferation policy. And then the last point I wanted to make is that ongoing wars, we've seen what's happened in Ukraine, at Zaporizhia, at Chernobyl, which has a hole in the containment above it, and also a drone attack on Baraka, the Baraka UAE nuclear power plant in the course of the Iran war, suggests that there are ample reasons that we might need to go slower with not just the nuclear power plants we sell overseas, but also specifically deploying some of these reactors with our forces overseas. Thank you very much.